Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villere's Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villere's provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villere's Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Homeowners insurance increasing or deductible too high? Call, click, or come in. Save it, Dave. Dave Miette Insurance Agency.
For over 48 years, Southern Tires and Auto Repair has provided services across the New Orleans metro area. Southern Tires offers a range of tires for all vehicles and ATVs. We also have a full suite of auto repair options, including brake repair, rim repair, custom exhaust, steering and suspension, tire siping, and so much more. Southern Tires and Auto Repair, 2550 Hickory Avenue in Metairie.
Cnc Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, Cnc provides patient-centered care for your entire family. Cnc Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we will cover all the home teams. We'll talk Saints, we'll talk Pelicans, we'll talk college basketball and college baseball. And to break it down for us is none other than Jude Young, voice of the UNO Privateers, of course, of also CrestCitySports.com and All Access on 106.1 FM. We're live from our Pontchartrain Production Studios. Jude, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's my favorite but busiest time of year, with especially a really good UNO team. First place in the Southland. Those games on Nash Icon 106.1 FM all season long. And of course at CrescentCitySports.com. February, when you talk about high school, college, and the pros, a lot going on, even with the Saints supposedly in the quiet season.
Yes.
It's been nothing
quiet
of the sort lately.
Right.
And of course on Nash Icon, I also host a show, one of the all access 6 o'clock hours on Tuesday night, fill in here and there otherwise, 6 to 7 p.m. That's 106.1 FM. But I enjoy it. I love it. I love being busy this time of year. I love watching a really good mid-major basketball team that has some high hopes here down the stretch.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to get into that in the second hour, but college basketball in New Orleans for the first time in a long time is viable. Right?
It's a really good bang for your buck. Go watch these games where you wonder about the Pelicans night in, night out, even though they're trying to make it happen. Tulane is a blast. The atmosphere over at Devlin is like we haven't seen in decades, literally. And they're a fun basketball team that Ron Hunter promised to deliver. And at UNO, one of the best mid-major players in the country that people are learning about, Derek St. Hilaire. He might be on display come Final Four weekend in the slam dunk contest, I'm hearing. When I tell you about a 6-foot guard who can do it all, leading scorer in the Southland Conference, the big reason why the Privateers are in first place. Please, only 2 more home games counting Saturday. Come check him out before he's gone.
Yeah, and then of course Loyola. Number 2
that's
NAIA,
right. Yeah,
you know?
they're blowing teams out. They're scoring 100 points, I think 7 or 8 times now. Zach Reitzel, one of these guys who you might hear about moving on, perhaps if he has another year of eligibility that he wants to use, he might go and play major college basketball somewhere. But that team that's been built by Stacey Hollowell, a hidden gem here in New Orleans.
It's been fun. It's been really fun. It's good to have, again, college basketball relevant here in New Orleans. All right, let's jump into the Saints first. And it's been interesting, again, since Dennis Allen was hired. And let's start there. I'll tell you what, let me get your take on the legacy of Sean Payton. Then we'll get into the DA, and then we'll talk about the offense and defense coordinator searches.
Well, what can you say about what Sean Payton accomplished over 16 years, 15 coaching? He made this franchise one of the best in the NFL. He made the Saints understand the day-to-day that it takes to be a winning organization. Look, Mickey Loomis, a big part in that as well, but it starts with the head coach setting the tone day in, day out, determining what you need to fit the puzzle pieces together with your roster. And sure, they hit a home run with Drew Brees, there's no doubt about it. But even when Brees hasn't been available, there's a reason why this team has had such a good record, and they were competitive last year with everything working against them. I know it seems like he's quitting on the franchise, and quite honestly, he is. It is not a retirement. He's going to be coaching somewhere again, unless he falls in love with TV. Right. But that doesn't take away from what he accomplished here. Leaving an organization in the shape where they can hire their defensive coordinator and really keep a lot of the status quo in place. And most outsiders even say, well, I can't blame them. They are in pretty good shape. Credit goes to Sean Payton for coming in, taking over a disaster, and building consistency and a winner, and then leaving a good organization.
I will say this. Defense is intact. Did leave the offense a little bit barren.
Right.
Okay.
And that's the salary cap issues that really caught up with them. The pandemic obviously really screwed up their planning in order to continue to manipulate the cap, which is smart business, honestly. Ask the Los Angeles Rams. If you've got a team that's close, do whatever you can to make your roster as strong as possible and win now. The Saints tried to do that, didn't have the best of luck in the postseason to get over the hump, but they were there, and that's all you can try to do. It's a win now league, and I think the Saints are going to be in good shape moving forward to continue to be a solid roster.
No doubt about it. With that said, Dennis Allen takes over. Your thoughts?
I think he's somebody who probably learned his lessons coaching a bad situation with the Raiders and is trusted inside the organization. So I don't have any doubt that he's going to be able to come into the job and try, by the staff changes he's looking to make, to be able to put his own imprint on things and have people that he trusts. But since you're a team that's now really built on defense, it makes sense to allow him to have this second opportunity. I think he'll do well. It just comes down to what the short term's going to be, which is still competitive, versus are they going to be a contender after this year and moving forward. I don't think they know that yet, so why go shopping when you got a little late on the market to find somebody who might be a more dynamic name when you're a settled team, a settled organization, and you have somebody who understands what the strengths are already.
Right, and of course, look, the theme has been continuity, right, from day one. And look, it's understood. When again, you have a culture that has been passed on by generation to generation of Saints players since Payton and Brees were here. A lot of those leaders are on the defensive side of the ball. Your leader on the offensive side of the ball is Kamara, and he's got some issues. We'll get into that later. It just makes sense to try to be able to elevate from within. Now, it could blow up. We have no idea.
Right.
Okay, that's it. I understand the plan. I understand why going in that direction, but there are no guarantees.
It's really tough because if you're looking at it from management standpoint, it's a settled roster, and it's a team that with any luck at all last year would have made the playoffs. But when you are so much in question at the most important position on the field with no answer in sight at this point, and you have other issues on that side of the ball, it was hard to go out there and say, hey, we can go shopping for a dynamic name and really make big changes when even when they make, and they will go from $70 million over the cap to have room to make things happen. They will be able to do that, as has been chronicled lately. You're still at a point where you're settled, but still very much in transition. So it's hard to figure out how the organization is going to balance that out, because I still think they're trying to put together a plan to figure out how can we be better on offense, how can we come up with that answer at quarterback that everybody needs to truly be relevant. So why not stick with a guy who understands the strengths they have defensively? And I think at the very least the Saints will be a team next year, if they don't get a great quarterback in hand, that will be pretty much in every game. And if you're in games and have a good defense, you can win a lot of them.
They have brought back Doug Marrone, who looks like he's going to be the offensive line coach. They brought back John Morton, who looks like he's going to be the wide receivers coach. At least that's what we believe. Curtis Johnson was relieved of his duties, which is surprising because he's really a good wide receivers coach. We don't know what happened there. Again, maybe we'll find out down the line here. They've gone through the interview process. They've done their due diligence in terms of, again, going out there and looking for candidates on the offensive side and the defensive side of the ball. They've satisfied the Rooney Rule in terms of external minority candidates. On the offensive side, they've interviewed. Obviously, Jay Gruden came in within the last couple of days. Scotty Montgomery, Robert Prince. Again, both those guys are minority candidates. On the defensive side of the ball, Michael Wilholt. Also, again, Aubrey Pleasant came in, and they interviewed for the defensive coordinator position. Both, again, satisfy the Rooney Rule there. They settled on Pete Carmichael yesterday. Now, here's what I talked about on the radio show yesterday. He should have been the guy from day one. I just never understood this. You know, the first narrative that came out was, well, he doesn't want the job, okay? And then I was taken back by that. Wait a minute. If you're trying to keep continuity and you're elevating Dennis Allen, you want to make sure that, again, this offense, which is, you know, the basis for the most success this team has had, you want to keep that intact. Now, I don't have a problem with, you know, interviewing guys, getting maybe again a look at the RPO, maybe again the Boise State tree, where they were talking about, I think Ross Jackson mentioned this in his article, where he says that, you know, they kind of dumbed down the route tree for the wide receivers. I don't need to see a Saints scheme that needs to be dumbed down. I need someone that ultimately, again, understands what Sean Payton was doing on a week-in, week-out basis and can carry that over to the next regime. Again, when you look at the Payton tree in a lot of cases, none of those guys are coming back. When Doug Marrone came into the fold, you thought, well, okay, maybe he's the OC, because Carmichael at that point wasn't taking the job. Now he is, again, it was announced yesterday, he's going to be the offensive coordinator. My issue yesterday on the show was, hey, man, what was the hesitation? And can you be halfway in? You're either all the way in or you're out. And that's what I didn't understand about this. You know, did he not want the responsibility? Was he worried about the fact that Breeze and Payton weren't here? All those factors. But at the end of the day, you hold the keys to the offense. You're the guy that has been part of this since day one. And if there's any, you know, blemish on this, it's, hey, guy, why weren't you all in from day one?
Do we know for sure? We haven't heard from the horse's mouth whether this was some sort of a narrative that the Saints were trying to sell about Pete Carmichael, to say he's loyal, we want to keep him around, but we are shopping around to find something different, and we're going to cover for him by saying maybe he doesn't want that day-to-day role. To be going back to him almost makes me believe that that wasn't coming from the horse's mouth, that he was very much interested in being the play caller full-time finally, and Dennis Allen was trying to see if there was something out there different to fix an offense that isn't good, that doesn't have Drew Brees anymore, that doesn't have a lot of weapons. Certainly if Michael Thomas doesn't come back as the same guy, other than Alvin Kamara, who's in legal trouble, what do they have that's special as far as the skill positions go? I understand the change on the offensive line with Doug Marrone because they didn't perform very well last year. Particularly, are you going to get something out of Cesar Ruiz or not? Because if you don't, that whole draft becomes a disaster. That's true. And it hurts you when you have a terrible draft across the board. That creates holes in your roster.
Especially when you only have a few players that you drafted in the draft, right?
Four to start out with. Can you rehab that player in that position so you get a different look in there? And again, we're guessing on Carmichael. But I'm trying to read Dennis Allen's mind.
Even Allen didn't comment on that during his press conference.
Here's my thought on that. I really do think he was trying to do, like you said, his due diligence to see what he can find that maybe can shake things up a little bit, maximize their personnel more. Maybe they have to simplify things offensively. Who knows what it's going to take to fit the quarterback and the talent that they're going to have to roll with when it's all said and done. But when it comes down to it, if you can't find that, and again, you don't know what kind of quarterback you're going to have. Is it going to be an athlete where you're going to run a lot of RPOs and have the mobility, or are you going to go with another pocket passer? You could be drafting Kenny Pickett from Pitt, you could be drafting Matt Corral, or you could be signing a free agent. It could be Jameis Winston. So you're talking about maybe trying to find answers when you don't even know what the question is yet, is how I felt that this was going on. And in the end, go with what you know. But I do give Dennis Allen credit for making some changes already with people that he happens to know who used to work for the team before. You talked about Marrone and Morton. Because he's the guy who sees this offense and this personnel every day. He's the guy who also has been coordinating against schemes across the NFL. So he sees some things that work. He sees some things as far as execution-wise at different positions. When he's looking at practice, his mind as a defensive coordinator is always thinking, where is a weakness that I can take advantage of? You're doing that watching film of other teams.
Sure.
So you're naturally doing it when you're seeing the team you're playing against every day. So he knows where changes need to be made and looking for different types of improvement that former colleagues of his that he's bringing back, he believes might be able to fix based on player development in the past versus now. So maybe he thinks Johnny Morton's just a better day-to-day, hands-on coach than Curtis Johnson. A lot of people don't feel that way, but there's a lot of love for a local coach who's had a fine career.
I mean, the guy,
he's got a lot of respect.
Come on, he's
around the football world.
Best wide receiver coaches in the NFL.
Right. So again, you just have to wonder what Allen is seeing and looking for, and those things he will not reveal because he shouldn't be, because those should be kept under the vest until you can, at the very least, until you can find out what you can actually develop once we get to the fall. So there are a lot of moving pieces here, and there are things we're never going to know just trying to read his mind.
If that's the Saints narrative, they made a mistake. Okay.
Maybe
because they've cast doubt within the fan base and even in the media. Oh, wait, the guy doesn't want the job? I mean, I get it. He didn't want to interview for the head coaching job.
Right.
Okay. Because again, he just doesn't seem like he's head coaching material. But he is tailor-made to be able to again pick this offense up from Sean Payton. And again, he's called the plays before.
But is that what you want to do moving forward? Again, when you don't even know who your quarterback's going to be, does Dennis Allen want to keep that offense with the Sean? I'm not saying.
Why wouldn't you though?
I'm not saying I wouldn't. I'm saying they don't know. If they wind up going with a completely different style of quarterback, maybe like Sean Payton dreamed Taysom Hill would be, but somebody who's actually a young developmental version of that. If they wind up going that route, then the offense is going to be so vastly different than anything we've seen here that you maybe need fresh sets of eyes to be able to execute that and make it happen. It'll be very interesting to see who they bring in as analysts, for example, when they try to tweak what they do moving forward based on the quarterback. Could be a pocket style, passer style, could be somebody who's a great athlete who needs to be groomed. We don't know yet, and the fact that Dennis Allen doesn't know probably makes his job very difficult trying to put together a staff, much less an offensive depth chart.
Now, again, Prince is a guy that, again, comes from the Boise State tree. Always a great offense there. We've seen it, right? Under Kellen Moore, he's wide receiver coach now for the Dallas Cowboys. You look at Scotty Montgomery, first in the RPO. If you're picking those guys' brains, you know, to see, again, what's going on in the interview process and satisfying the Rooney Rule at the same time, hey, you know what? That's great. The narrative of, you know, he doesn't want the responsibility. He's not interested in being the offensive coordinator. Then all of a sudden the about face of, oh no, he's the offensive coordinator. Everything's cool.
And people will forget about how that went down as soon as he speaks publicly and clears things up. I have no doubt that he'll be able to do that, and I have no doubt that he'll be a very solid offensive coordinator who will do what any chef can do, only as good as the ingredients he has to make the dish.
That's the issue there, and that's the issue again from you know, across the board, as I've said on the radio show and this show as well. To me, it's not the system. It is, again, the lack of talent on the offensive side of the ball.
Did you feel like watching the team, especially when the talent was clearly a problem, that it felt a little stale, that Sean Payton, part of his frustration, he didn't have any answers? If you're a guy who's used to doing things a certain way for so long, maybe, and Pete Carmichael's your right-hand man doing it for over a decade, maybe it comes to a point where they were straight out of answers, because it certainly looked like it. I mean, there were times when the offense would completely shut down.
But Jude, they've never had, you look at it, they've had guys with high football IQ.
Sure.
Okay, you look at the Lance Moore, you look at again, Marcus Colston, Willie Snead, at the wide receiver position. These guys weren't game breakers. I mean, they didn't go anywhere else and really have any success.
But if you don't have more explosive players around them, that defenses have to game plan to stop so that you can counter and set those guys up. You can't be successful. I think Marquez Callaway is a solid NFL receiver.
Third receiver.
Right. And if he were on those teams, he would have been producing at a high level like the Lance Moores and Devery Hendersons of the world. But he's not. So there weren't answers there after that.
But you see, can you really judge that with, again, not having Drew Brees and not having Michael Thomas?
No, you can't.
Okay?
I agree with that.
I mean, that's the difference. I mean, how much better would Jameis Winston had been last year if ultimately Michael Thomas is on the field?
Sure, it would have made him better. How much better? But sure, better. We don't know, though, because we haven't seen it, and we haven't seen Michael Thomas healthy in 2 years. So we don't know what kind of Michael Thomas we're going to get. There are just so many questions. I think, like you said, maybe the best part of a involved interview process is you're sitting down for 6-8 hours with these guys. You're learning a lot about how they think and how the league thinks by bringing different people in from other organizations where you can learn a few things. You're taking notes as much about what they're saying as who they are.
That's where I think they checked all the boxes. Bieniemy, bringing in a lot of these guys for the head coaching position, where again they got a chance to be able to kind of pick their brains going forward.
But there you go. In the end, it's backing up what you're saying. Maybe they found the answer was already in the building.
Well, and I never doubted it was in the building, because I never thought that. Again, I thought if anything,
I think it was very good that they did doubt that it was in the building, though. Yeah. Whether it's true about Carmichael or not, as far as passion goes, because if you don't have the passion to dig down, and get deep into the film, and come up
as an
with
offensive
stuff
coordinator
throughout a football season that's grueling, you're not going to succeed.
There's no way in the world. Defensively, again, they've done their due diligence. I've mentioned in terms of again going out there and interviewing the candidates. Everybody still believes it's either going to be Richard/Richard or it's going to be Ryan Nielsen. I've talked about on the radio show, Ryan Nielsen looks like maybe the guy because it's the next step for him in terms of a coach.
Right.
Dennis is going to call the plays. So when he's going to call the plays on game day, as a coordinator, you're a coordinator in name only.
Sure.
So for Ryan Nielsen, it's the next step for him. Maybe again from there on his next stop, he's calling the plays as defensive coordinator. I think that Richard is going to want to call the plays.
Right.
Okay.
He's done it before.
That's right. So why would he take a subordinate role in terms of defensive coordinator, where he's again he doesn't have to.
Let's be fair. He's done it before at 2 different stops, and now he's back coaching in the secondary again. So you take what you can get,
I get
especially if you're taking over a successful unit. You're going to get some credit for that, particularly if they make strides in certain areas and somehow get even better. You take that gamble. So they're both going to want the job, but it makes much more sense for Nielsen from Allen's perspective, because he has a guy who hasn't done it before, who's going to be more than willing to organize and learn the way Allen wants it. So it would be very surprising if it's not Nielsen, who wanted his chance at a major college, LSU, and was held back from doing it to the point where they gave him that Dan Campbell role as your assistant head coach. So they wanted to keep him here for a reason, I think, because the idea was Sean Payton stays, Dennis Allen becomes a head coach somewhere, so it's the obvious guy to move up. This fits so much better because you don't have the inexperience factor.
And you've got a guy that has grown in the organization, and let's face it, what he's done for the defensive line, anybody can see again the growth. Even again, undrafted free agents, what he's been able to do. So again, he's got skins on the wall there. It'll be. I talked about it this week. I got a feeling. Well, I would hope that this is going to be done with the defensive coordinator by the end of the week. Now, the end of the week is tomorrow, right? But again, you've got a combine coming up in 2 weeks. You got to get your ducks in a row in terms of free agency. Saints have always plugged holes with free agency, and then best player available for the draft. So again, you got a lot coming up in a short, condensed period of time here to kind of get your staff together. And look, we don't know how many staff members are going to get picked off by other teams, where you may have to again double down on some staff members.
Right, and just because we talked about maybe promoting from within, that creates new holes that they may not want to elevate from assistants to the assistants or analysts like we've seen them do in the past. So yeah, they know they're on a time frame here that all started late because they weren't starting this start over at head coach early in January because of the Sean Payton timing. But they'll get all that taken care of at this point. And I think you can argue that hiring from within in the end on both sides of the ball makes the most sense because of the timing. Because you had all these other head coaching openings, 8 others, where coaches were hired, except for in Houston, where they've had a lot of issues making decisions, period, where there already have been interview processes and staffs built, and you missed the boat, so to speak, this offseason. Defensively, we know Marcus Williams is going to be an issue in this offseason on whether you're going to re-sign him or not. Turned down a top 5 contract last year. Again, I don't think you can overpay for him. And as a matter of fact, I've said it. I'm on the record as saying they made a mistake. I pay Trey Hendrickson. I pay the defensive end. I don't pay the safety. Right. Okay? Most people in the league would argue if you're comparing the two. It's a skill position, guys who can rush the quarterback. Ask the Bengals. They don't have any buyer's remorse after what they got out of him. But that decision has been made. And that affects not only this past season, but the future. You have committed now to being able to re-sign him. So they need to. And the one thing that plays in the Saints' favor that it makes sense is it is now more of a premier position, that center fielder defensively.
Absolutely.
That you can rely upon, that helps you not give up the deep plays, that has good ball
But you'd rather have a better tackler at that safety position.
You would, but the Saints made their bed, now they have to lie in it. You'd have a much better run defender other than Trey Hendrickson, in theory.
Yes.
But you take what their strengths are that make them important NFL players and you pay them. The Saints are going to have to pay a reliable center fielder. And fortunately, he's what? 25, 26. Right. So you can give him a very long-term contract to spread out the money, which is going to hurt because he's going to get his top 5 money. He's going to get a boatload, but you have to re-sign him. Because if you don't, that creates another hole that you can say, well, you can go spend that money someplace else. When you out in free agency and try to do that, very seldom do you actually hit on the Trey Hendricksons of the world from other teams, because those other teams tend to keep them, and the Saints would have if they'd have had an extra $25 to $30 million in cap room like they expected before the pandemic.
No doubt. And then, of course, there's the Davenport factor as well.
Sure.
2 #1 picks, doubling down on him. You know, there were a lot of other factors there. Quan Alexander, P.J. Williams, 2 other players that are going to unrestricted free agents. I'm on the record as saying there's a niche here and here for them from New Orleans. They may go get more money elsewhere, but the best place for them is in New Orleans. Now, again, you got Pete Werner who can come in and step in for Quan if necessary, and then they can figure out again what's going to happen at that hybrid safety position with P.J. Williams.
I will say this about P.J. Williams, though. Keep an eye on the Detroit Lions.
True.
Okay, because Aaron Glenn, Dan Campbell, but Glenn in particular.
I would say the same thing for Marcus Williams.
He's probably looking at what a very cheap deal the past couple of years has led the Saints to get in production out of P.J. Williams, and knows, the Saints are in cap trouble. We could pay a couple extra million and be able to utilize his services on a team that really needs veteran leadership and guys who can play a lot of different roles while they build something.
Right, and he knows the system there.
You're right, and Quan Alexander's a tough one too, because he's proven that he came back healthy. And he's a very good starting NFL linebacker, but you invested a second-round pick last year in Pete Werner. DeMario Davis isn't going anywhere. You tend to only play 2 linebackers on the field most of the time. And Payton Ellis did a good job in that strong side role when you needed him against more run-heavy teams. So when you talk about allocating assets, you made a decision again last year with your draft pick that may lead them to having to say goodbye to Quan Alexander, even though I think they'd clearly be a better football team with him.
Absolutely, especially because, again, we all know from injury standpoint, you need quality depth.
Right. And
that's what hurt this team last year. They purged that quality depth. Offensively, they need everything. I mean, they just do. They need wide receivers, multiple, draft and free agent. They got to figure out what they're going to do at offensive line, as we mentioned, especially if Teron Armstead moves on, as a lot of people believe that he's going to. He's going to go look for a big contract, his last contract. And then, of course, the tight end position, they need a veteran there. But the most important position on the field, we have no idea the direction they're going. Some are speculating now that Carmichael has been hired the OC. They're going to go back to Jameis Winston. There have been rumors out of Airline Drive. They really like Teddy Bridgewater. Maybe they're going to draft a player and groom that player down the line. What direction do you think they go?
The best decision right now looks to be Jameis Winston, because what you saw out of him last year was good enough to win. Saints would have been in the playoffs if Jameis Winston would have stayed healthy. And quite honestly, if they believe that they're still a team that their goal is to make the playoffs, and there's no quarterback they can get their hands on, the Aaron Rodgers dream, of course the Russell Wilson dream, they're not in the Deshaun Watson market, which really hurts because Carolina may be, and that could totally swing
And I don't see that happening with Miss Benson.
And that's correct. So knowing that, outside of that, you're talking about overpaying for Kirk Cousins, overpaying for Jimmy Garoppolo, when you could just go ahead and not have to overpay for Jameis Winston and probably get the same production that the last 2 guys I just mentioned would be likely to give you, and you can contend again. That's what stinks about where the Saints are right now, because if you don't have that guy at quarterback, you have a ceiling. And it's not a glass ceiling you're going to be able to break through. At least Winston still has that upside where if they like what they saw and what was coming along, and they could invest, therefore, in improving their weapons and just get a little better receiver, maybe the door opens for this team to surprise next year when a lot of teams are going to be more in transition. Look at the Rams. They mortgaged the future. They won a Super Bowl. What are they going to look like? The contenders in the conference. Green Bay is in almost as bad a cap situation as the Saints.
Yes.
They're going to have to make some tough choices. Those are your two power teams in the league, along with Tampa Bay that doesn't have Tom Brady anymore.
Right.
So that really opens doors to you not having to be great. You can be Cincinnati in the NFC next year, be a 10-7 division winner, and go to the Super Bowl. So I think that's how the Saints are probably thinking at this point.
Well, and of course, you speak about Tampa. I've been talking about it on the show now for a while. I'm rating the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If I'm free agency, they're probably going to franchise tag Godwin. Okay, but if they don't and they blame him on the open market, he's my target. Bringing Leonard Fournette here, okay, especially with the Kamara situation now, would be something I would look at. O.J. Howard has not really flourished in Tampa. He's a guy I may take it.
He's a buy low candidate that makes sense for the Saints, for certain. But if Godwin is on the open market, do you want to pay that guy who's really been a number 2 receiver despite his production based on how he's used? And you can argue, well, he would be a number 2 receiver here too if Michael Thomas is back where you expect him to be. You want to pay him $20 million a year because that's what he's going to cost when you're already paying Michael Thomas $20. Math doesn't add up.
Speaking of Michael,
talent, I like.
No, that's right.
Math doesn't add.
Michael Thomas, speaking of him, again, it was reported this week that, again, he's back in good grace with the team. He's going to be full go this season since they have no plans to trade him. I didn't think they would with the $22 million in dead money they'd have to eat on him this year. If you're looking at the salary cap, next year would be the year, if ultimately he comes back, proves himself healthy, where you would trade him. If
that's where both sides clearly understand their situation, and they may fall in love for real again moving forward.
Sure.
But at the very least, the value has to be built back up for both sides.
But I think we both agree they need a starting wide receiver, a veteran, and they have to go into the draft. And this can't be one of those years where you're picking in the third round looking for a wide receiver.
Right.
You've got to get a guy that can come in and play day one.
And the first round in a deep wide receiver draft, they can find what they
can.
Need. So again, last time they went there, they did a great job because Brandon Cooks has been an excellent NFL receiver and a really productive number 1, despite all the weird trades that he's been involved in. Everywhere he's went, he's been good. He's been an 1,000-yard guy. So you can find that guy, and you don't want to be pigeonholed, but it's sure really high on the priority list. At the very latest, the second round, where you may be able to find a field stretcher who can help you year one.
Right. And the other thing is, are they going for a young quarterback?
I don't think so.
Are they looking at Corral or Pickett in the first round?
I think, like you said, if you're right, that they settled, let's stick with Pete Carmichael, that seems to indicate to me that they're going to go veteran and try to keep things as is and not going for dramatic changes. And because they need help on the offensive line. People have given them grief for going offensive line in the first round. If they really value a guy who can play left tackle, and Armstead does, go someplace else for the payday. That makes sense. Get the receiver. They have other needs versus what is always a dice roll at quarterback, particularly if you're picking 18th right now, and you can only go up so far in a trade. If they're not a top 10 guy, what are you doing?
Right, and it's a very, very heavy defensive draft where again, a lot of defensive players will go early. Let's talk a little bit about Toronto Armstead. Obviously, he's going to get a lot of money on the open market. Look, everybody's been talking about Cincinnati. I've talked about it. You've talked about it in your show. It's a natural fit for him. They need a left tackle. Ryan Ramczyk, in his contract, what we've been told is there is a stipulation if he moves to left tackle. Again, obviously his contract increases. That's got to be, I would think, the plan there. Okay, they're flipping him to the left side if Armstead moves on. Is it Landon Young? Are they going out and getting another tackle in the draft? Is it going to be James Hurst? Or what the situation is going to be? What do you think happens on the offensive line?
I think your tackles wind up right now being Ramczyk and Hurst, unless they go first round at tackle. You mentioned Landon Young as a 6th-round pick they like. He could have a future at right tackle, a la the Zach Strief 7th-round pick many years ago. That could certainly work out. It's very rare when you get lucky in the 3rd round and get a freakish athlete in Armstead and he's an all-pro, and then you come back with a late 1st-rounder who winds up being as good as any right tackle in the league. That worked out for a long time in Ramczyk. They're going to get a look at him at left tackle. If it somehow doesn't work out, they could roll for a year with Hurst at left tackle and Ramczyk at right. That's by far the favorite at this point to happen because of the other needs where you're going to have to spend money in draft capital to get better at receiver. And I really wonder like what they're thinking as far as Still trying to come up with playmakers at places you don't think they really need them. They probably think they need a Trey Hendrickson-type edge rusher to add a different dynamic on their defensive line. Those guys are hard to get your hands on.
They drafted one, didn't they?
Yeah, well, they did, but he's not that. He's much more of the Cam Jordan replacement moving forward because he's an every down, what they really
Payton
like,
Turner.
that big 6'6", 6'6", 6'7" guy like Davenport as well. Tano Passamoa being brought in, who was productive before he got hurt. But it's nice to have that change of pace. It's nice to have that junk baller in the bullpen, or at this pace, the guy who comes in and throws 102 miles an hour that they couldn't afford last year, unfortunately.
Dude, I think it's an offensive draft. I think you got to go in all in on offense. I mean, I think you do, because again, I think defense, you're pretty much set.
I'm just saying, there's a shopping list, and they're not going to reach for, we really want that next young offensive lineman when we really like this edge pass rusher. They've shown it before.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
They will draft to strength if that's by far the best player on their board.
But I want to get Alvin Kamara in before we go to break, and we move on to basketball. Kamara, again, arrested in Vegas for battery resulting in substantial bodily harm. There was an additional charge yesterday, conspiracy to commit battery, that was added to again, his charge. Court day is in early March. Where before it was kind of being not a luxury, you needed to add another running back because of an aging Mark Ingram. The backups they have right now have not shown that they can play on the NFL level consistently. They're nice special teams players, but it is what it is. As far as Washington and Jones, you need another back now, and now you need a starting back in the NFL. He could miss as much as 6 games ultimately if the NFL throws the book at him.
Right, and we don't know when that's going to happen based on how the case will evolve. But yeah, they needed that already because Mark Ingram came in and did a nice job, but his durability is now a question. His age is a huge question mark. And after that, Tony Jones, Ty Montgomery. When Alvin Kamara is not available, they're more substandard at running back than even at wide receiver. That's how bad the offensive skill position rooms are at this point. So yeah, they need to find something, but you don't invest big money on the free agent market at running back, and the Saints aren't going to allocate their funds that way anyway. It's more likely they're going to think more along the lines of second and third day of the draft. We got to get another dynamic talent in the room and not try to get lucky on drafted free agency again. All right, let's take a quick break. We come back. We'll talk some NBA with the Pelicans, and then we'll get into some college basketball, and we'll finish up with college baseball. Jude Young, CrescentCitySports.com, 106.1 FM, and the voice of UNO Privateers is our guest. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We'll be right back.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Jude Young is our guest. All right, Pels 23-35, 5-5 in their last 10. They're in the 11th slot right now. The big deal, obviously, was, again, the trading of Josh Hart, Tomas Sadanowski, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Didi Lozada, their 2022 protected first-round pick and 2 future second-round picks to the Portland Trailblazers for C.J. McCollum, Larry Nance Jr., Tony Snell. Larry Nance Jr. underwent surgery on his knee. He had it scoped. Should be 4 to 6 weeks. They expect him back if they get into the tournament. Obviously, Tony Snell's is on the floor now as in a backup role, and C.J. McCollum, who I said yesterday on the radio show, is the second best guard in the history of New Orleans Pelicans / Hornets basketball, with all due respect to Drew Holiday. Chris Paul, C.J. McCollum, we have not seen a player that can create his own shot at that position since maybe Chris Paul, who again was a facilitator.
Right.
Okay. So ultimately, again, he makes this team that much better. by walking in the door, and also again his buy-in to Willie Green, his buy-in into the Pelicans as well. But there's a transition period. They're 1-4 with him on the floor right now. He's playing fantastic. But anytime that you get into a situation where you're trading away assets that have had a big part of this team in the locker room and on the floor, there's always a transition period. But with that said, I don't think anybody can look at this and not say the Pelicans did not win this deal. And this is not desperately what they've been needing for a long, long time in terms of a player that can create their own shot, especially again at the guard position, where again they've gone through so many that ultimately, again, finally we're seeing something that maybe there could be there's at least a big 2. Maybe there could be a big 3 down the line if Zion ever gets healthy.
It's the type of trade where you catch a team at the right time. Usually the Pelicans are the team being caught at the right time. The Blazers deciding to rebuild in the middle of the season. When something like that happens, you right place, right time with a need. Finally, it worked out for New Orleans. David Griffin making a good deal because Nickeil Alexander-Walker needs to go someplace where a team can gamble playing him 35 minutes a game and see if he can come out and be successsul. But
he's in a good place in Utah,
but
right?
Unfortunately, he got shipped off by Portland to Utah, and I just don't know how it's going to work out.
You don't think it's going to work out?
He's going to have to develop behind the scenes and in practice.
Right.
There's nothing better than developing in games.
Right.
I'm sorry.
It's true.
But he had to go in order to fill that void.
Mm-hmm.
It hurts to lose Josh Hart because he's such a good defender.
Right.
Maybe a bit overrated defender, but a good team defender, an effort guy, a glue guy, and a rebounder, of course. Very different for a wing, a guard, to have that kind of talent to his extreme. But they had to have the score. And C.J. McCollum, outside of Steph Curry, clear out, let the guy pull up and hit jump shots.
Right.
Threes, mid-range. Yeah. There's 2 on that list, and then there's a big drop-off to everybody else. So you're talking about an exceptional shooting, scoring guard who really wants to be here. You can't fake what he's saying and how he's acting.
Right.
That's genuine from the heart. He's a cultured guy.
Right.
He's somebody who had to work his way up. He came out of the Patriot League. He didn't come out of the ACC, okay? So he appreciates everything he's got in his career, and now he has the opportunity to be the man in the backcourt. Still playing and complimenting other good players, which you need to have any hope to be on a winner. Brandon Ingram's a different type of guy to play with than the ball-dominant Damian Lillard.
Right.
So he's got another chance here as he gets into his 30s to be able to be on a team where if they're successful, people are going to say, this is C.J. McCollum who made this happen, because when he came in, they started to win. He embraces that. I see a cultured guy. He has his own wine label. He's a businessman. So he's going to bring all sorts of maturity in the locker room. And even though he can be a volume scorer, he's not a selfish player.
No, he's not. He facilitates.
He's had the share, and he's probably a better facilitator than he's been allowed to be. He's going to see the ball more. The problems that they've had since he's gotten here, when you talk about reshaping the rotation, have to do with the other pieces, not him.
No, not at all. It's them getting used to playing with C.J. McCollum.
You didn't think you were getting C.J. McCollum when you were desperate on the market in the offseason and were shooting high for Chris Paul, for Kyle Lowry, and you wound up with Devontae Graham.
Right.
And now when you have an undersized guard who is a very poor man's version of C.J. McCollum, who's also an issue as a defender, who really can't play with McCollum, even though you're trying to start them together right now. It's killing you in multiple ways on both ends.
You should have immediately moved him coming off the bench.
Yes, absolutely.
Immediately. And I'm sure that Willie Green is going to do that.
Why is Jackson Hayes not playing the 4 when playing next to a big man? He's been more effective. You can roll with that lineup and get off to good starts. And Graham's much better suited, like we saw at his best in Charlotte, coming off the bench and being a gunner against second units.
True.
You can play him undersized with Jose Alvarado, and that'll work a lot better in short shifts against backups than it does when you talk about the starting lineups, and him playing crunch time minutes against longer front backcourts. It's not going to work, and Willie Green's going to have to be less stubborn and make the change.
I think he's going to make the change, because he even mentioned it again, that he's going to have to make some changes in the lineup.
I get that he didn't want to rush it right away, and you can probably still be in that 10 spot and make the playoff, even experimenting right now. But once you get past the All-Star break, experimentation time over. Get your best lineup mixes out.
Well, you got to go to the 10th spot. Look, your draft pick now is protected 1 through 5. If you're in the lottery and you're not 1 to 5, either the Trailblazers or the Hornets are getting that getting that pick. So,
and it would be a disaster if they don't make the 10th spot based on the teams they're competing with now. Another big trade, blow it up. Sacramento in turmoil. Interim coach. Portland. You were competing with Portland. If they somehow finish ahead of you, what is going on? And even though you got embarrassed again by the Spurs, you're in a transition phase.
Right.
You gotta outplay them down the stretch. If you can't beat out those 3 teams for that spot, then you've got bigger problems, even with, it seems like, head coach solved, than maybe the front office believes.
Yeah. Well,
and that's without Zion.
That's what I was going to say. This is without Zion. Okay, I think that they can make it without Zion. They need to make it without Zion. But let's talk about Zion now. Christian Clark reported yesterday from the Noel.com there could be a second surgery needed on his injured foot. My first question is, why is it taking so long? If ultimately he needed the surgery, should have maybe got that surgery a little bit earlier. But again, he's rehabbing in Portland, out of sight, out of mind. He's not been involved in this culture change.
Right.
This culture change has been without him even here.
Yeah.
Okay? So now if he does come back, because there's been another report out there that, again, he is coming back after the All-Star break. So I guess we'll have to see what happens here. But let's say he comes back. There's another transition period here, Jude.
Sure.
Okay, this is a ball-dominant guy that, again, is going to have to transition back into the lineup here. May affect a guy like Valanciunas more, maybe a guy like Jackson Hayes, but it's going to affect the entire team based on, again, his minutes, what he's doing, etc. First of all, what do you think? Is he coming back? Is it second surgery? Do you have a clue? What does this mean to the team?
I have no idea. We're just guessing.
Right, that's all you can do at this point.
But it does seem like it's leaning towards second surgery based on just the reports we're getting.
Right.
We're not hearing anything, again, talking about the horse's mouth, we're definitely not hearing anything from him. So we don't know. But the reality is people have had this similar type of foot fracture in the past, including Kevin Durant,
right,
including Ben Simmons, needed multiple surgeries. So if it's leaning that way, and the difference between those slender, in-shape guys and the weight that Zion carries really makes you think they're going to have to do surgery to get it right, to make sure it heals right. I'm at this point anticipating he won't be back this season, and I'm not saying that's for the best, because whenever he does come back, unless he gets a full off season in training camp, he's going to have to deal with those words he didn't like the first time he had to hear it. Minutes restriction, right?
It's the truth.
He pouted about it, but they were trying to protect his health that the organization has, been justified in trying to protect, because he keeps getting hurt. It's a tough situation, but it's one where if for some reason he were able to come back healthy this year, you take it. I think Willie Green's a better communicator and would be able to figure it out and make it work. So if you get 20 great minutes from him, 24 great minutes from him, and play him in crunch time when he's playing with the Pelicans botched multiple times during that last stretch. You're going to win more games.
Yeah, no doubt. When you look at Zion with the extension looming, do you offer the max?
Yes, you have to. It's not a question.
Windhorst said this morning on Get Up that it has to be an incentive-laden max based on playing time. Do you think he signed something like that?
No, I don't think he does. The players have all the power in the NBA, and he's still a commodity. And you can argue that just like Michael Thomas, he does need to come back healthy and show his value, but he could come back healthy at his age and play 3 games and look like Zion again and reestablish his value. It's not like football where you get limited opportunities to do it. He's going to get the money that a superstar gets, even though he hasn't played enough to be an established, consistent superstar yet. That's how the NBA works. Take it or leave it.
Shift gears to college basketball. LSU 19-7, 7-6. They're 5th now in the SEC. They've won 2 in a row. Actually, won 3 in a row now, right? 3 in a row now after the Georgia win. They're looked at on all the bracketology as probably a 6th seed now going into the SEC tournament. Chances of the Tigers getting in the tournament and advancing.
I'd be shocked if they don't get in the tournament.
Agree.
Advancing is going to entirely be predicated on who they play.
Right.
Because if they get the wrong kind of matchup, they can lose.
Right.
If they get a team that's physical in the front court and has some athletes there and can bang with them, that can beat them in an ugly game, for example. Okay, a team that can really shoot the lights out and handle the ball well and handle the pressure defense that the Tigers throw at you. Because LSU has limitations. Tari Eason is tremendous. I love what they do bringing him off the bench.
Yes.
Right, he's a great spark plug early in games, and then he plays heavy minutes, and if he's playing well, they're going to play well. And when they have their entire roster together, I think they're 17-1 now. Xavier Penson being out there on the floor.
Right. He's the engine.
I mean, because they're so good defensively. But when you talk about the NCAA tournament and how far they can go, they do have limitations because they don't have anybody who can consistently take the ball on the perimeter and get you big shots.
Right.
They're just not built that way.
Darius Days has got to be on.
Right, and he's somebody who's much more of a spot-up shooter, pull-up shooter, too much so, and the whole roster is not good enough at that consistently to expect them to make a good run unless they get just the right matchups. But they are elite defensively when they have everybody available, and you can't count out a team that at their best can hold you down to the low 60s or even into the 50s. True. You don't have to do too much to win games when you're doing that.
Yeah, but again, you got to be able to have offense. The name of the game is putting the ball in the basket, and they struggle at that at times. All right, your UNO Privateers, 15-9, 8-1, first place. They have taken all comers in the Southland Conference up to this point. We'll talk about now again, in the Southland, you have to be able to win the tournament to be able to get an NCAA berth. Talk about the opportunity for them to be able to maybe again make it into the NCAAs. I think they're shooing for the NIT. Okay, no matter what.
Well, they're not. Let me explain the situation. You have to win the regular season title to earn as a low and mid-major conference that NIT bid. If you don't win the regular season title, you're probably not getting in.
Right.
So UNO's in position now in first place, where if they can go ahead and they could lose one game, even to Nichols, who's in second, in the season finale at Thibodaux. If they take care of the rest of those games, then they will get that NIT bid and that #1 seed. But just getting the top 2 seeds, if your goal is NCAA, and yes, it would be great to go to the NIT. Everybody's goal is the NCAA. That's where you want to go. In the Southland, it's crucial to be a top 2 seed because the conference tournament is built differently, and I love it, especially for leagues that are one-bid leagues. They have a stair-step system to their bracket. This year, they only have 8 teams in the conference, so all 8 go. The bottom 4 teams, 5 through 8, have to win 4 games to win the automatic bid. 3rd and 4th place get 1 bye into the quarterfinals. 1st and 2nd place, they're in the semifinals already. And more than likely, one of those teams is going to win most years that happens. Right now, it looks like Nichols, along with UNO, is going to be there. Southeastern still has a shout at it. So you're almost in a 3-team race already for that. If you can at least get that, you're in great shape. But sure, it would be great to clinch the NIT bid because one game, even when you're in the semifinals to start, anything can happen, especially in the Southland because it's a league that's so up-tempo.
Talk about Tulane, 12-11, 9-5, 4th place in the American. You and I were talking about it as we opened up the show. There's excitement on Ferret Street now for basketball. Your thoughts of them again making it to the tournament, making it to the NCAA tournament out of the American?
Well, obviously they have to win the tournament, but they're in a position now with where they sit in the standings and with the way the schedule sets up the rest of the way that they can be a bye team into the top 4 places, which is, much more traditional bracket with the 12. You want to be in the top 4 and not have to play the first day. And they're good enough to make a run and do it. Now, do they want to run into Houston at any point? Well, if you get them on a neutral floor any given day, sure. And Memphis, when they're healthy, they beat Memphis but Memphis was missing 3 key pieces because of COVID, and they beat them by a point at home, and then they lost there. And Memphis is playing their best basketball right now. So those two, talent-wise, are a cut above. They lost to SMU in a game where the Mustangs hit 15 threes. They can beat them on a neutral floor, I have no doubt. They're capable because they've got firepower. Just like UNO, I wanted to mention Derek Saino, their leading scorer in the conference, 6 feet, incredibly dynamic guard. If you haven't seen him, 2 more home games at the Lakefront, go see him. And Troy Green, 5th-year senior who's up in all the UNO records as far as points, assists, steals, you name it. He's been tremendous. Multiple State Player of the Week awards for both of them. You have that guard play. You have scorers. You have guys who can take over games. And you have multiple guys, so it doesn't have to be the same one all the time. Jalen Cook, Jalen Forbes, they've got that at Tulane. And Kevin Cross in the front court providing solid play as well. They're not overly big, but they have firepower. And that gives them a real shot come March.
And then finally, Loyola. Again, 25-1, 14-1 in their conference. 2 more games left in their conference. Number 2 overall in the NAIA. Losing only to Faulkner after again getting hit by COVID. Came back and blew them out later on. Your thoughts on them winning a national championship?
And they were very good against Talladega, another top 5 team in their conference, and they won that matchup. This is a team that can really get up and down the floor. I don't care what level of competition you're playing, but you're playing conference games at this point and scoring over 100 points numerous times. I think they've scored over 100 now 7 times already this season. They are so dynamic. What's really made them a step above when they're already good the past couple of years and able to win NAIA national tournament games is adding Brandon Davis, a local guard out of East St. John, who gives them a point guard who can also shoot because they already had somebody in Zach Wright Weitzel, who was a big-time star, and other athletic players around them so that they can play up tempo and put pressure on teams, they can win a national championship. It's amazing what Stacey Hollowell has built, and I believe his 8th season there now, picking up what other coaches in the past slowly had to build, not having full scholarships available, having to fundraise for that. Loyola's committed to sports now. They have a nationally ranked baseball program, too, and they have a lot to be proud of with that basketball team.
I got 3 minutes. I'm putting you up against the clock. College baseball, give me a thumbnail on LSU, Tulane, UNO, and Southeastern.
Well, for LSU, Jay Johnson's first season, they should have firepower galore in their lineup. They're going to hit the ball. You have somebody like Dylan Cruz coming back, Jacob Berry transferring from Arizona with his head coach, Trey Morgan. They're all first-team All-Americans everywhere you look, and they've got talent in the order behind them. What it's going to come down to is how good is the pitching going to be? Are they going to find the right guys on the weekend rotation going into the season opener? Blake Money, who was more of a reliever and out of shape, transformed his body in the offseason, has the arm talent. Maybe he steps up, but that's going to be a real experimentation process for the Tigers to try to figure that out. If you're going to win on the weekends in the SEC, get to host a regional. But they're top 10 across the board depending on the poll. Their hitting will bail them out a bit as the pitching works out. But they might be a piecemeal type team where their starters don't tend to even go 5 innings, but they have enough arms and matchups that they try to do that to win games. And that is a doable way to do it if you have enough of that talent. And I think LSU does have enough options there. Tulane picks second in their league. In the American, it's basically East Carolina every year and everybody else. They lost a lot of talent, though, the Pirates. They're still good, but Tulane is good enough, and they have a solid weekend rotation, transfers from Mississippi State and ULL in particular filling in there behind Hoffman, who was a freshman All-American type talent, who should be the Friday night guy. Bennett Lee, an excellent catcher, and they've got some guys that need to have some bounce-back seasons to hit the ball to complement what should be, again, pretty good pitching. They're going to compete for the league title. Would be very surprised if they don't have a winning season, and it feels like they're going to be a regional team this time around. If they aren't, Travis Jewett's going to feel the pressure.
Yes, he will.
Blake Dean won't at UNO. He's got a contract extension, 4 more years. Here's Howard, maybe the best hitter in the conference, some preseason player of the year picks for him coming back as an outfielder who can really slug. They've got some bats in their lineup. They always do with Dean as the coach. They're trying to figure out pitching again, but they think they have more healthy arm talent on the roster this time around going into the season than they had last year when they finished second in the Southland. Southeastern's the favorite, though. And they lost a lot of talent to the draft as far as arms, a couple of key transfers in their lineup, but Matt Reiser's team always plays fundamental baseball around their pitching. But keep an eye on Brendan Stuprich out of Brother Martin, who was the freshman of the year in the Southland. He's huge on the mound for them, but he's not going to be available at least for a month into the season. They lost their other ace to the draft, so that's tough to fill in that kind of pitching talent, even if you're a program that's good at doing it.
This is why we have Jude Young on at least once every 6 weeks. And again, this is why you should be listening to his radio show each and every Tuesday. A computer, okay? Knows every single sport. Jude, thanks as always. Certainly appreciate the time. And best of luck to UNO as you guys get ready to get into the tournament.
Thanks so much.
All right, thanks so much for tuning in. Plenty of ways to be able to catch our program now. So many rebroadcasts. The first rebroadcast will be tonight at 6 p.m. on WLAE-TV. There's a rebroadcast at 10 p.m. on the Deuce, WLAE-TV 2. Friday nights, 9 o'clock, Pelican Sports Television, 10 o'clock LAE. 2 a.m. on Saturday morning on the Deuce, and then 5 p.m. on Pelican Sports Television on Saturday afternoon. At Eric_Asher on Twitter, Eric Asher on Facebook, Inside New Orleans Show on Instagram. That's our social media platforms. The show will be there. It's also on the WLAE-TV YouTube page and also at ericasher.com. Don't forget to catch me on the radio, 4 to 6, 106.1 FM Nash Icon. Again, you can listen live at ericasher.com. Also, again, the iHeartRadio app, the TuneIn Radio app. And our podcast is everywhere. Anchor's our home base, but on all podcasting platforms. Remember, Jude Young is on every Tuesday night following my show, 6 to 7 on 106.1 FM. Again, special thanks to the underwriters that support our program. Please support our underwriters. Also, the WLA production staff who do a great job in producing our program. Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Alex Chacon, Logan Rafia, and of course, my director, William Hill. For Jude Young, I'm Eric Asher. Have a wonderful week. We'll see you right back here next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.